The night was so quiet that even the ticking of the old clock on my bedroom wall sounded like thunder in my ears. I had always been a light sleeper, but that night something more than habit kept me awake. I could feel a strange energy in the air, as if the house itself was holding its breath. My husband Daniel was lying beside me, or at least he had been. When I turned over to check on him, the sheets were already cool, his side of the bed empty. It was 3 in the morning. My heart started to pound against my ribs. Where could he be going at this hour? For months now, I had felt an unsettling distance between us. Daniel, the man who once shared every detail of his day with me, had become secretive. He stayed late at work, brushed off my questions with half answers, and often avoided my gaze when I tried to look into his eyes. I told myself it was stress. I told myself marriages go through phases. But deep down, I knew there was something he wasn't telling me. That night, I was done pretending. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet making no sound against the hardwood floor. I crept toward the window and pushed the curtain aside just an inch. My breath caught. There he was, Daniel, standing at the edge of our driveway, looking left and right like a thief in the night. He clutched something in his hand, a black duffel bag, heavy enough that he had to adjust his grip twice. A rush of cold went through me. My first thought was wild and irrational. Was he leaving me? Was he walking out of our marriage at 3 in the morning, carrying all his secrets in that bag? But then he turned. Instead of heading for his car, he slipped into the shadows along the side of the house. My confusion deepened. I knew I had only one choice. I grabbed my robe, my phone, and the old pair of sneakers by the door. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline surging inside me. I told myself I wasn't snooping. I wasn't paranoid. A wife has the right to know what her husband is hiding. The air outside was damp and heavy with the scent of wet earth. I followed Daniel at a distance, my steps slow and careful, my eyes locked on his silhouette. He moved, quickly, like a man with purpose, glancing over his shoulder every few steps. He didn't see me. He didn't hear me. We left our quiet neighborhood behind and entered the woods that bordered the back of our property. I had walked these trails in daylight, during family picnics or afternoon strolls, but in the dark they felt sinister. Every tree, a looming figure, every branch, a claw reaching out. Daniel's pace quickened. I had to press my hand against my mouth to silence my breathing. My phone's flashlight tempted me, but I didn't dare use it. One wrong move, and he would know I was there. Minutes stretched like hours. Then suddenly, he stopped. My body froze behind a tree, my pulse hammering so hard I thought the sound would give me away. Daniel crouched down and set the duffel bag on the ground. I leaned forward just enough to see the beam of a small flashlight cut through the darkness as he unzipped the bag. I couldn't see what was inside, but the way his shoulders hunched told me it was something he didn't want anyone to know about. He pulled out a shovel. The metallic scrape against the dirt sent shivers up my spine. He was digging. At 3 in the morning, my husband was digging a hole in the woods behind our house. I pressed my back against the tree, my mind spinning with questions I couldn't answer. What was in that bag? Why did he have to bury it in secret? My thoughts grew darker with every shovelful of dirt he tossed aside. I remembered news reports about hidden crimes, about people who lived double lives. Could Daniel, the man who had kissed me goodnight, be capable of something unimaginable? I wanted to run. I wanted to confront him right then, demand the truth, shake him until he admitted what he was doing. But something stronger held me in place, the need to know. After what felt like forever, Daniel dropped the shovel and wiped the sweat from his brow. His breathing was ragged, his movements frantic. He opened the duffel bag again, reached inside, and pulled something out. From where I stood, I couldn't make out the details, but the shape was odd, bulky, wrapped tightly in black plastic. He lowered it into the hole that my knees went weak. The forest spun around me. My mind screamed one word: body. I bit down on my lip so hard I tasted blood. No, I told myself. It couldn't be. Daniel wasn't a killer. He wasn't a criminal. He was my husband, the man I had built a life with, the father of my children. But then, what was he burying at 3 in the morning, in the dead silence of the woods? I clutched my phone, my thumb hovering over the record button. Should I film this? If he discovered me, if he caught me spying, what would he do? I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, in my temples, in every part of me. Daniel filled the hole, packing the earth with a force that seemed almost violent. Each strike of the shovel echoed in the night. When he was done, he stood there, staring at the ground as if making sure no one would ever uncover what he had just hidden. Then, without warning, he turned his head sharply. His flashlight beams swung in my direction. I ducked behind the tree, my entire body pressed against the bark. My lungs burned from holding my breath. The light hovered for a moment, then moved away. Daniel picked up the empty duffel bag, slung it over his shoulder, and started back toward the house. I stayed frozen until the sound of his footsteps faded. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding, my body trembling so hard I thought my legs might give out beneath me. When I finally dared to move, I crept forward and stood over the patch of freshly turned earth. The soil was damp, the outline still visible. Whatever secret Daniel had buried was right there, just a few feet beneath my shoes. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and relentless. I didn't know what I had just witnessed, but I knew my life would never be the same again. And in that moment, under the cold stare of the moon, one thought consumed me. I would find out the truth no matter what it cost. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, bright and unforgiving. It felt wrong, almost cruel, that the world could look so ordinary when everything inside me had shifted. Daniel lay beside me again, as if nothing had happened. His breathing was steady, his arm draped casually across the pillow, the picture of a man with no secrets. I watched him with a mixture of disbelief and fear. How could he sleep so peacefully after what I had seen? Did he truly believe no one would ever discover his midnight errand? Did he believe his wife would remain blind forever? Every instinct screamed at me to confront him, to demand an explanation, but reason held me back. If I accused him now without proof, he would only deny it. Worse, he would know I had followed him. Then he would be more careful, more guarded, and I would lose any chance of uncovering the truth. So, I forced myself to play the part of the oblivious wife. I smiled when he finally stirred, I kissed his cheek when he leaned in, and I pretended not to notice the faint dirt under his fingernails when he reached for his coffee. My stomach twisted at the sight, but I kept my mask firmly in place. As Daniel left for work, my plan began to form. The woods were still there, the patch of disturbed earth was still waiting. If he had buried something, I could find it. My hands shook as I gathered what I needed: gloves, a trowel, a flashlight. I felt both terrified and determined. The walk into the woods seemed longer in daylight, though less menacing than the night before. Birds chirped overhead, their carefree songs mocking the storm inside me. Every step brought me closer to the truth, and every step made my heart pound harder. When I reached the spot, my breath caught in my throat. The soil still looked fresh, its surface uneven compared to the untouched ground around it. Kneeling down, I pressed my gloved fingers into the dirt. The cold earth crumbled easily, almost as if it were daring me to dig. I worked slowly at first, then faster as my fear gave way to urgency. The trowel bit into the ground, tossing clumps of dirt aside. Sweat dripped from my forehead, my arms aching, but I couldn't stop. I had to know what Daniel had hidden. Then the metal edge of the trowel scraped against something solid. My body went rigid. My pulse thundered in my ears. I brushed away the dirt with trembling hands until I saw it: black plastic, tightly wrapped, exactly as I had seen the night before. For a moment, I froze. Opening it could change everything: my marriage, my safety, my very life. But walking away was impossible. I had already come too far. With shaking hands, I tugged at the plastic until it ripped open. My eyes widened, and a sharp cry escaped my throat before I could stop it. Inside was not a body, not blood, not bones. It was stacks of cash. Bundles upon bundles of $100 bills, neatly tied with rubber bands, packed tightly into the bag. My mind spun. Why would Daniel bury money in the woods? What kind of secret was this? Where had it come from? I pulled out one bundle and turned it over in my hands. The bills looked crisp, too crisp, like they had never been touched. I had never seen this much money in my life. The sight made me dizzy, but it also terrified me, because I knew one thing for certain: money hidden underground never came from anything good. I shoved the bundle back into the bag and rewrapped the plastic. My chest heaved as I filled the hole again, my movements frantic. When I finally stood, my knees were shaking, and the world seemed to tilt beneath me. On the walk home, questions clawed at me. Was Daniel involved in something criminal? Was he laundering money, stealing, or worse? The man I thought I knew suddenly felt like a stranger, a dangerous stranger. When Daniel returned that evening, I forced myself to act normal. I laughed at his jokes. I cooked his favorite meal, and I even sat beside him on the couch as if nothing had changed. But inside, I was unraveling. Every smile he gave me, every word he spoke, felt like a mask covering something darker. As he reached for the remote, I noticed a flicker in his eyes, a quick glance toward me, as if measuring my mood. Did he suspect anything? Did he sense that I knew? I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My reflection in the mirror startled me, pale, hollow-eyed, like a woman on the edge of breaking. I clutched the sink, whispering to myself, "You need to stay strong. You need to be smarter than him." That night, I lay awake while Daniel slept. My mind raced with possibilities. If he was hiding money, then someone else might be looking for it. If he was involved in something illegal, then I was already in danger. And if I didn't figure out the truth soon, it might consume me. The next day, I made a decision. I couldn't do this alone. I called my sister Rebecca and asked her to meet me at a cafe across town. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw me. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. I leaned in close, my voice trembling. "I followed Daniel last night. He was in the woods, burying something. Rebecca, it was money. So much money, hidden underground." Her eyes widened in shock. "Are you saying Daniel is hiding cash in the woods? What does that even mean?" "I don't know," I admitted, tears welling in my eyes, "but it scares me. I don't know who he is anymore." Rebecca reached across the table, gripping my hand tightly. "You need to be careful. If he's hiding something this big, you can't just ignore it. But you also can't let him know you're on to him. Promise me you won't confront him yet." I nodded, though fear twisted in my chest. She was right. I couldn't confront him, not without more information. But the weight of the secret was crushing me. When I returned home, Daniel was waiting at the kitchen table, his eyes locked onto mine, searching, probing. "You were out," he said casually, but there was an edge to his voice. "Yes," I replied, forcing a smile. "I met Rebecca. We had coffee." He studied me for a long moment before finally nodding, but the way he looked at me made my skin crawl, as if he could see through the mask I wore. That night, when he thought I was asleep, I felt him shift beside me. Sliding out of bed once again, my heart leaped into my throat. He was going back. This time, I stayed in the shadows of our bedroom window, watching as he disappeared into the woods with the same black duffel bag. My chest tightened with dread. If he was moving the money, then he might suspect it had been touched. If he was burying more, then the scale of his secret was even bigger than I feared. I whispered to myself in the darkness, a vow that steadied my shaking hands. I would follow him again, and this time, I would uncover everything. The second time I followed Daniel into the woods, my body moved like it already knew the rhythm of fear. My heart pounded, my breath came in shallow bursts, but my legs carried me forward with a strange steadiness. I felt like I had crossed an invisible line, the kind of line you never step back over. Once you follow your husband into the darkness twice, you stop being just a wife. You become a spy. Daniel's silhouette was ahead of me again, sharp against the glow of his flashlight. The black duffel bag swung from his shoulder, heavier this time, bulging at the sides. My stomach churned. More money, or something worse. The trees whispered around us, their branches groaning in the night wind. I stayed close enough to see him, far enough that I prayed he wouldn't notice. The path was familiar now, my sneakers crunching softly against the dirt. Every sound felt amplified, every step louder than it was. I told myself over and over that I had to stay silent, invisible. No matter what I saw. Daniel stopped at a new clearing, not the same spot as before. He set down the bag and pulled out his shovel. The way he drove it into the ground was almost violent, as if he needed to punish the earth itself. My hands shook as I gripped the tree in front of me, my nails digging into the bark. Minutes passed, and the hole grew deeper. He glanced around often, his face tight with suspicion. My body stiffened each time his light swung near me, but it never lingered long enough to catch me. Finally, Daniel opened the duffel bag. My eyes widened. Inside were not just stacks of money, but also something else. Small, tightly wrapped packages, their shapes irregular. He lowered them into the hole one by one, his jaw clenched, his movements frantic. A cold chill swept through me. Drugs. The thought was so sharp it cut through my mind like glass. Was Daniel hiding drug money? Was he involved in something so dangerous that burying evidence in the woods was safer than keeping it anywhere else? My breath caught when one of the packages slipped from his hand and split slightly against the shovel. A white powder leaked out, glowing faintly under the flashlight. My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the tree harder to steady myself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I stayed silent, frozen, watching the man I had married burying what looked like a fortune in both cash and drugs beneath the soil. When he finished, he wiped his forehead with the back of his arm, his face grim. He covered the hole again, patting down the earth with a precision that sent shivers through me. Then he slung the empty bag over his shoulder and stood still, scanning the woods with eyes that seemed sharper than ever. I pressed my body against the tree, praying he would not feel the heat of my fear radiating through the night. His light swept across the clearing, then slowly turned away. When he finally left, disappearing down the path, I stayed rooted to the spot. My chest heaved, my throat burned, and tears blurred my vision. The truth was darker than I had ever imagined. Daniel was not just hiding money. He was hiding something that could destroy both of us. By the time I stumbled back home, my body was numb. I climbed into bed beside him hours later, pretending to stir as if I had been asleep the whole time. He murmured something drowsy and pulled me close. His arms felt heavy around me, not comforting but suffocating. I stared into the darkness, feeling like a prisoner in my own marriage. The next morning, my hands shook as I poured coffee. Daniel moved around the kitchen casually, humming under his breath, as if the night had been nothing more than a dream. I studied him, searching for cracks in his facade, but he wore the same familiar mask of an ordinary husband. When he left for work, I sat at the table, staring at my untouched cup. I felt trapped between two versions of him, the man who kissed me goodbye with a smile, and the man who buried drugs in the woods at 3 a.m. I called Rebecca again. My voice trembled as I told her everything. "This is worse than I thought," she whispered, shock lacing every word. "If what you saw is true, then Daniel isn't just hiding money. He's involved in something criminal. You need to be careful, very careful." "What do I do?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Do I go to the police? Do I confront him? If he finds out I know, he could," my words faltered, the weight of them too heavy. Rebecca's voice was firm. "Do not confront him yet. Do not go to the police until you have proof. If he is part of something bigger, you have no idea who might be watching. You could be putting yourself in even more danger. You need to gather evidence, quietly." Her words rang in my ears long after we hung up. Evidence, proof. That meant following him again. That meant risking everything. That night, as Daniel sat across from me at the dinner table, I studied his every movement, the way he avoided eye contact, the way his hands twitched when I asked simple questions, the way his smile seemed forced. He was hiding something, yes, but he was also watching me, testing me. Later, as we lay in bed, I felt his body shift beside me. My heart leaped into my throat. He was getting up again. I waited until he left the room before slipping out of bed. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and jacket. I couldn't let him go without me knowing where. The woods were colder that night, the air sharp against my skin. I followed him, staying low, every nerve in my body on fire. But something was different. Daniel stopped more often, his lights sweeping wider, his steps slower. My blood ran cold. He was not just walking, he was hunting. The realization hit me like a blade. He suspected someone was following him. He suspected me. I crouched low, holding my breath as his flashlight cut dangerously close. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. For a moment, his light lingered, hovering over the trees where I hid. Then, as if satisfied, he moved on. I stayed frozen, every muscle tense, until I was certain he was out of sight. Only then did I retreat, my body shaking so hard I could barely stand. When I finally made it back to the house, I collapsed against the door, tears streaming down my face. I knew now that this game I was playing was not safe. I was not just watching him anymore. He was watching me too. The thought clawed at my chest, filling me with dread. If Daniel realized the truth, if he caught me following him again, I might not make it back home at all. And yet, even through the terror, one thing burned bright inside me. I had to keep going, because whatever Daniel was hiding underground was not just his secret anymore. It was mine too. Was not just his secret anymore. It was mine too. I did not sleep that night. The image of my husband's face in that dim tunnel, his lips pressed into a grim line as he closed the box, kept looping in my mind. My heart pounded like a drum that refused to quiet. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flicker of his flashlight and heard the scrape of metal against stone. By dawn, I had made up my mind. I would not just follow him again. I would uncover what he was hiding, no matter how much it hurt. The morning came cold and gray. The kitchen smelled of burnt toast and bitter coffee. He sat across from me, his eyes shadowed, his hair disheveled as though he had not slept either. He stirred his cup slowly, not drinking, just spinning the spoon as if caught in thought. I forced myself to speak casually, asking if he had a busy day ahead. He nodded, avoiding my gaze. His answers were clipped, short. Something had changed in him, something he could not disguise. I watched every twitch of his fingers, every breath he took. The silence stretched long, heavy between us. For years, our mornings had been filled with easy chatter, gentle laughter, the soft comfort of routine. But this was different. This was two strangers sitting at the same table, both pretending everything was fine, both holding back storms they dared not reveal. The day dragged slowly. I walked through the house with my mind racing, trying to recall every detail of what I had seen. The soil under his nails when he returned, the faint smell of damp earth on his clothes, the tension in his shoulders when he saw me awake. It was not just some meaningless midnight stroll. This was deliberate, secretive, dangerous. By evening, I had formed a plan. I would return to that place alone. I needed to see with my own eyes what lay beneath those tunnels, what truth my husband thought he could bury underground. I gathered a small flashlight, a scarf to cover my mouth from the dust, and gloves so I would not leave fingerprints if I had to touch anything. My heart thudded as I packed, fear and determination warring inside me. I knew this was reckless, but ignorance was worse than fear. He left the house at 9, claiming he was meeting an old friend for drinks. His voice trembled as he said it. I nodded, pretending to believe, but the moment his car disappeared down the street, I slipped out the back door. The night air was biting, the streets eerily quiet. Every sound seemed amplified. The crunch of gravel under my shoes, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant bark of a dog. I wrapped my coat tighter, walking faster, until the dark outline of the construction site loomed before me. The gate was chained, but a section of fencing sagged where it had been pried loose. I squeezed through, the metal scraping my arm. The site lay deserted, machines resting like sleeping giants under the moonlight. I moved carefully, every step deliberate, until I found the half-hidden entrance I had seen before. The earth smelled raw and wet as I ducked inside, my flashlight slicing through the darkness. The tunnel walls closed around me like a throat swallowing its prey. The silence pressed in, broken only by the drip of unseen water. My breath sounded too loud. I kept going, following the faint marks of disturbed soil, until I reached the place where he had crouched. The ground looked freshly turned, a patch of dirt darker than the rest. My hands trembled as I brushed it aside, revealing the edge of a wooden box. My pulse hammered so hard it hurt. I dug with frantic fingers, pushing soil away, until the box was exposed. My flashlight beam caught its surface. It was old, weathered, the wood damp and rotting at the edges. My mouth went dry. I hesitated, terrified of what I might find, but curiosity pulled harder than fear. With both hands, I pried it open. Inside lay a stack of letters tied with frayed string. The paper was yellowed, edges curled, as though they had been buried for years. I picked one up, my fingers shaking. The handwriting was delicate, looping. My throat tightened as I read the first line. My dearest love, if you are reading this, it means our secret remains hidden. I froze. The words blurred as tears stung my eyes. The letter was not addressed to me. The name at the bottom was a woman I had never heard of. Letter after letter spilled, confessions of love, promises of escape, plans whispered in ink. And then, darker lines, warnings about being discovered, hints of something dangerous. I dropped the bundle back into the box, my chest constricting. Who was she? How long had this gone on? My husband had buried her words beneath the earth, as though trying to silence a ghost. My mind spun with questions, dread building like a storm. A sudden sound made me jolt. Footsteps echoed faintly through the tunnel. I killed my flashlight and crouched low, heart pounding so loud I thought it would betray me. The steps grew louder, closer, until I could hear the rasp of his breathing. My husband's silhouette appeared, flashlight in hand, sweeping the walls. He was muttering to himself, words I could not catch. He reached the spot where the box lay. I watched in horror as he bent down, his hands trembling as he touched the letters, his face twisted, torn between grief and fury. He whispered the name written on those pages, over and over, like a prayer or a curse. My stomach dropped. This was no casual affair, no fling. This was something that had consumed him, haunted him, driven him into the ground like the letters he kept hiding. I pressed myself into the shadows, holding my breath as he stood. His flashlight beams swept dangerously close. If he turned a fraction more, he would see me. My knees shook, but I stayed frozen, every muscle locked. After what felt like an eternity, he closed the box again, shoveled dirt over it with desperate haste, and staggered back down the tunnel. I waited until his footsteps faded before I dared to move. My legs felt like lead as I stumbled out into the night air, gasping as though I had been underwater too long. My mind screamed with questions, but one truth echoed louder than all. My husband was living a double life, chained to a past I knew nothing about, a past buried in the soil with letters that spoke of forbidden love and danger. I reached home before him, threw off my gloves, and collapsed onto the couch, shaking. When he returned hours later, his face was pale, his clothes smeared with dirt. He looked at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw guilt flash in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, he walked past me, up the stairs, and closed the bedroom door. I sat there, staring into the darkness, the truth pressing heavy on my chest. Whatever secret he was hiding underground was not finished, and neither was I. Morning, after I uncovered the letters, the house felt like a cage. Every corner held silence, too heavy to bear. My husband sat at the dining table, his eyes locked on his plate, though he barely touched the food. His hands shook as he lifted his cup, spilling a thin line of coffee across the table. When I asked if he was all right, he gave me a sharp look, the kind that ends conversations before they begin. I studied him carefully. His skin was pale, his jaw tight, his eyes rimmed with red. Something inside him was cracking. He thought his secret was safe underground, but I had already touched it, read it, breathed it in, and even though he did not know I had seen, I could feel the air between us thickening with suspicion. By noon, he left the house without a word. His car pulled out of the driveway, tires crunching over gravel, and for a moment I stood at the window, watching, until the sound faded. My instincts screamed that if I let him walk away again without following, I would lose the chance to truly know. I grabbed my keys, stuffed the letters I had taken into my bag, and followed. His car wound through town, past familiar streets, and then turned onto an old road that led toward the edge of the forest. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. He drove fast, like a man being chased, though only his own demons followed him. I kept a safe distance, heart pounding with every curve, until his car stopped near a secluded clearing. I pulled off the road and watched from the cover of trees. He stepped out, glancing around as if afraid of being seen. Then, he opened his trunk and lifted something wrapped in cloth. The shape was long, heavy, and when the fabric slipped, I caught a glimpse of rusted metal. It was a spade. He carried it like an executioner walking to his duty. I followed at a distance as he disappeared into the woods. The ground was soft from rain, my shoes sinking with each step, branches clawing at my sleeves. I crept forward until I saw him in a small clearing. He dug furiously, his movements jerky and desperate. The sound of metal striking earth carried through the trees. Sweat poured down his face as he muttered words I could not fully catch, though one name kept repeating, the same name that had been signed at the bottom of those letters, when the hole was deep enough. He knelt and pulled another bundle from his bag. My stomach lurched as I realized what it was. More letters, photographs, trinkets. He hurled them into the ground like they were poison. Then, he pulled a small box from his coat and held it against his chest for a moment. His head bowed. I could see his lips moving, whispering to the soil, before he tossed the box into the hole and began to cover it. I crouched low, my breath shallow. A branch snapped under my foot. His head jerked up, eyes scanning the trees. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. He stood still, shovel in hand, the silence around us so deep I could hear my pulse in my ears. Then he shook his head, convinced it was nothing, and returned to burying the hole. When he finished, he stamped the ground flat, wiped his brow, and stumbled back through the woods. I stayed hidden until the sound of his footsteps vanished, then rushed forward. My hands clawed at the soil he had just covered, my nails breaking as I pulled the earth away. The box emerged, dirt clinging to its edges. I pried it open. Inside lay a necklace, a delicate chain with a pendant shaped like a heart. The metal was tarnished, but the engraving inside was clear. It bore 2 initials entwined. Neither belonged to me. My chest tightened as if the ground itself had crushed me. This was not just some fling. This was love, deep enough to bury, to mourn, to keep alive in secret even after death. I slid the necklace into my pocket and covered the hole again. leaving no trace I had disturbed it. My legs shook as I returned to my car, my hands gripped the steering wheel, but I did not start the engine. I sat there trembling, staring at my reflection in the glass, wondering who the woman was whose ghost held such power over my husband. That night, when he came home, I watched him like a hawk. He smiled faintly, trying to act normal, but the dirt under his nails betrayed him. I wanted to scream, to throw the necklace on the table and demand answers. But I knew if I confronted him now, he would lie, twist, and bury me in excuses just as he had buried her memory. I needed more. I needed the full truth, not fragments pulled from the ground. So, I played my part. I asked about his day, pretended to listen as he spoke of meaningless errands, nodded when he kissed my cheek before bed. But when he turned off the lights and his breathing grew steady with sleep, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind was a storm. The next morning, I began digging in a different way, not with shovels, but with questions. I visited the town library, combing through old records, newspapers, archives. I asked quiet questions to people who remembered faces from decades ago, and slowly, a picture began to form. There had been a woman, years before I met him. She lived on the edge of town, young, radiant, full of life. People whispered about her romance with a man who was already committed. Some said she planned to leave town with him, but one night she vanished without a trace. No body was ever found. No investigation solved the mystery. Her name was the same one that echoed in those letters. The truth struck like lightning. The woman had not just been his lover. She had been his everything, and her disappearance was tied to him in ways he had tried to bury. I drove home with my chest tight, hands shaking on the wheel. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw him standing at the window, watching. His face was pale, his expression unreadable. When I stepped inside, he asked where I had been. His voice was calm, too calm, like still water hiding dangerous currents. At the library, I said, forcing steadiness into my tone. His eyes narrowed. For a moment, silence stretched sharp between us. Then he smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. You always loved your books. That night, as he turned away from me in bed, I realized something chilling. He knew I was searching. He knew the walls of his secrets were crumbling, and if I was not careful, I might not live long enough to expose them. I held the necklace in my palm, under the covers, the cold metal pressing into my skin. My heart whispered one truth louder than fear. I had uncovered only the beginning. The real secret, the one buried deeper than soil, was yet to come. The air inside our house had changed. It no longer carried the comfort of a home but the sharp edge of suspicion. Every glance from him felt like a searchlight, every word like a test. I moved carefully, measuring each response, pretending ignorance while my mind worked furiously to connect the fragments of truth I had gathered. The necklace weighed heavily in my pocket, a silent witness to a love I had never known existed. I kept it hidden, wrapped in cloth at the back of my drawer, terrified he would find it. At night, I sometimes pulled it out, tracing the initials with trembling fingers, wondering how deep his betrayal went, how much of our life together had been a lie. One morning, I found him sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. His eyes flicked up when I entered, and for a split second, I thought I saw fear in them. He quickly snapped the computer shut. Just emails, he muttered, his voice tight. I forced a smile. Work never ends, does it? He nodded but did not look at me again. That was when I realized the fracture in his mask. He was not just hiding something underground. He was hiding something in plain sight too. When he left for work, I rushed to the table and powered on the laptop. The screen demanded a password. My heart sank. He had never locked it before. It was a small thing, but it spoke volumes. He was guarding every doorway now. I knew I could not break through his digital walls, but I had another path. People, memories, history. I visited a woman named Margaret, who had lived in town for decades. She was old, her hair a silver cloud, her hands marked with veins and time. When I asked if she remembered the woman whose name haunted me, her eyes softened with sadness. She was beautiful, Margaret whispered, full of life, but trouble followed her. She loved a man she should not have loved. They used to meet late at night, always in secret. Then one day, she was gone. No goodbyes, no body, nothing. Some say she left town. Others say he did something to her. My stomach nodded. Do you know who the man was? Margaret hesitated, then shook her head. No one ever said it out loud, but we all had our guesses. Secrets like that rot a town from the inside. I thanked her and left, my heart hammering. The pieces were aligning too well. My husband's midnight journeys, the buried letters, the necklace, the whispers of a vanished woman. The truth pressed against me like a shadow I could not outrun. That night, as we sat at dinner, I decided to test him. I spoke casually, mentioning that I had run into Margaret. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. His eyes lifted slowly, searching mine. "Margaret?" he asked, his voice tight. "Yes," I replied softly. "She was telling me stories about people from long ago, about a woman who disappeared." The fork clattered against his plate. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. "People love their gossip," he snapped. "Do not listen to old wives' tales." I watched him storm out, my pulse racing. His reaction was too sharp, too defensive. He knew exactly who I was talking about. Later that night, I woke to the sound of movement downstairs. I crept from bed, my bare feet silent on the floorboards, and followed the faint creak of the stairs. He was in the living room, standing near my drawer, the drawer where the necklace lay hidden. I held my breath, frozen in the hallway, watching. He pulled the drawer open, rifled through its contents, his hands shaking. When he found nothing, he cursed under his breath, slamming it shut. My heart pounded. He knew something was missing from his burial. He knew someone had been there. I slipped back into bed before he could catch me watching. Moments later, he returned, his face pale, his eyes darting like a cornered animal. He slid under the covers, his breathing ragged. I kept mine steady, feigning sleep, though every muscle in my body trembled. The next morning, he was quiet, too quiet. He kissed my cheek before leaving, his lips cold, his eyes unreadable. The moment the door closed, I knew I was no longer just a curious wife. I was a threat to him. That realization terrified me more than anything else. I spent the day planning. I copied the letters, photographing each page with my phone. I placed the originals back in their box, careful to leave no trace. The photographs I uploaded to a secure drive, one he could not access. I needed insurance, something to hold on to, if his secrets turned deadly. By evening, he returned, his smile brittle, his voice too light. "How was your day?" he asked, pouring wine into my glass. I forced a smile. "Quiet, I did some reading." His eyes lingered on me, too long, too searching. He wanted to know if I had uncovered more. He wanted to know if I still believed his lies. I held his gaze, my heart steady. "You know, it is strange," I said softly, "how people can vanish without a trace. One day they are here, the next, gone, and no one ever knows the truth." His hand froze on the wine bottle. For a moment, the mask slipped. His eyes darkened, his jaw clenched, and I saw the man beneath, the man who buried love and letters underground. Then, just as quickly, he smiled again. "Yes," he said, his voice low. Strange indeed. That night, when the lights were out, I lay awake listening to his breathing. The house felt like a battlefield, silent but charged. I clutched the necklace in my hand under the blanket, its cold weight pressing into my palm. I realized something chilling. My husband was not just hiding a past. He was watching me, waiting, calculating, and the moment he confirmed I knew too much, he would act. The walls of our marriage had become a prison. The man I once loved was a stranger whose secrets seeped into every corner of our lives. The game was no longer about curiosity. It was about survival. I closed my eyes, my decision made. If he wanted to bury the truth, then I would be the one to unearth it completely. But I had to move fast, before the ground swallowed me too. The days that followed stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Every moment with him felt charged with unspoken tension. He was quieter than ever, moving around the house with a watchful heaviness, his eyes always scanning, searching. I sensed him trying to catch me in a slip, waiting for me to betray what I knew. Me in a slip, waiting for me to betray what I knew. But I had learned to wear a mask too. I cooked dinners, smiled when appropriate, spoke of trivial things. Inside, my mind was working without rest, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that pointed to one haunting truth. The woman from the letters was not just his past, she was his obsession, and her absence was tied to him in a way I had not yet fully understood. One night, as he showered, I ventured into his study. The room smelled of dust and old wood, the desk neatly arranged, the drawers locked. I crouched near the bookshelf, running my fingers along the spines. One volume felt different, heavier. I pulled it free and it clattered awkwardly in my hands. Inside the hollowed pages, a key glimmered. My pulse quickened. I tried the key on the locked drawer of his desk. It clicked open. Inside lay a stack of photographs, their edges worn, the images fading, my breath caught. They were of her, the same woman whose name echoed through the letters. She stood smiling in fields, at the edge of lakes, in front of old buildings, and in many of the pictures, he stood beside her, younger but unmistakable, his arm around her waist, his face lit with a joy I had never seen directed at me. Tears blurred my vision as I shuffled through them. Then, I froze. The last photograph was different. It showed her alone, standing near what looked like a cabin in the woods. Her smile was softer here, almost hesitant, and on the back, in faint handwriting, was a date, the very week she disappeared. The floor creaked behind me. I spun around, shoving the photographs back into the drawer. He stood in the doorway, water dripping from his hair, a towel slung around his shoulders. His eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" My throat tightened. I forced a weak smile. "Looking for a book." He studied me for a long moment, then walked over, closing the drawer with deliberate slowness. His hand lingered on the handle as his eyes locked onto mine. "Some things are better left where they belong." His voice was low, heavy with warning. I nodded, my hands trembling, and slipped past him. That night I barely slept. His words echoed like a threat, twisting through my mind. But one thing was clear. The photographs were not just keepsakes. They were evidence. He had tried to bury her letters, her trinkets, her memory, but he could not bring himself to destroy the images. They were his tether to her, proof of what he had lost or taken. The next morning, I made a decision. I would find the cabin. I spent hours driving through back roads, comparing landmarks to the blurred photograph. At last, hidden deep within the woods, I found it. The cabin stood weathered and abandoned, its roofs sagging, its windows shattered. Nature had begun to reclaim it, vines curling across the walls. Inside, dust cloaked the air, cobwebs stretched across corners. The floorboards creaked under my weight, but the silence was not complete. I felt something there, a heaviness, a presence that clung to the walls. I searched every corner, pulling open drawers, lifting rugs, peering into the fireplace, and then I saw it, a section of floor that looked different, newer than the rest. My hands shook as I pried at the boards. They lifted with a groan, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a small box, wrapped in cloth stained dark with age. I pulled it free, my heart hammering. Inside the box were more letters, these written in his hand, words of devotion, promises, desperate pleas, but the last one stopped me cold. "I cannot let you leave me. If you try, I will make sure no one ever finds you." My knees buckled. I dropped the letter, the truth crashing over me in waves. This was not just a love affair. This was possession. Obsession turned deadly. He had not just lost her. He had silenced her. A rustle outside snapped me back. I peeked through the broken window. His car was parked just beyond the trees. My blood turned to ice. He had followed me. I shoved the letters back into the box and slipped it into my bag, lowering the floorboard carefully. The front door creaked as he stepped inside. My heart pounded as I ducked into the shadows. He moved slowly, his footsteps deliberate, his eyes scanning the room. "Why are you here?" His voice carried through the silence, calm but dangerous. I held my breath, clutching the bag to my chest. He walked further in, his hand brushing over the walls like a man reacquainting himself with an old friend. His expression was unreadable, but there was something almost reverent in the way he looked around. I inched toward the back, praying the floor would not betray me. Every step felt like a lifetime. Then a board squeaked beneath my weight. His head snapped up. "Who is there?" His voice was sharper now, edged with suspicion. I ran, bursting through the back door. I tore into the trees, branches whipping my face. His footsteps thundered behind me, his voice calling my name. I sprinted until my lungs burned, until the world blurred. Somehow, I reached my car, fumbling with the keys. I started the engine just as he emerged from the woods, his eyes blazing. I sped away, the tires spitting gravel. My chest heaved, tears streaming down my face. In my bag, the letters rattled, the damning words etched into my mind. He had killed her. I was sure of it now. That night, I locked the bedroom door for the first time in our marriage. He knocked softly, his voice smooth, almost gentle. "Why is the door locked?" "I am tired," I answered, forcing steadiness into my voice. A pause. Then, "You should trust me." I lay in the dark, clutching the box to my chest, my heart racing. Trust him, the man who had buried his lover, who had written threats in his own hand, who now stalked me through the woods. Trust was no longer possible. Only survival remained. And as I lay there, One thought anchored me. If he had buried one truth beneath the ground, what else lay hidden, waiting to surface? The real story of her disappearance was still deeper, darker, and I was digging dangerously close to it. The box never left my side after that night. I kept it hidden beneath a pile of sweaters in the closet, but I could feel its weight wherever I went, as though the words inside pulsed with a life of their own. His letters were more than love notes. They were confessions, threats, proof of a mind twisted by obsession, and now they were my shield. But having the truth did not bring me peace. It brought danger. He had followed me to the cabin. He had chased me through the woods. He knew that I was searching. He must have sensed that the fragile veil of ignorance I had once lived under was gone. Every glance he gave me now was sharper, every silence heavier. At breakfast, he sat across from me, sipping coffee, his eyes never leaving mine. "You have been restless," he said at last, his voice measured. "I have had trouble sleeping," I replied. "You should not worry yourself about things that do not concern you." The words were simple, but the way he said them made my blood run cold. He knew, or at least, he suspected. That day I could not sit still. I paced the kitchen, washed dishes that were already clean, rearranged books on the shelf. My mind raced with questions. Should I go to the police? Could I trust them with something so old, so buried? Would they believe me, or dismiss me as a paranoid wife? I had nobody. No hard evidence, only letters and a gnawing certainty. As evening fell, I made up my mind. If I stayed quiet, I would never be safe. I would always be one step behind him, waiting for the next shadow to fall. I needed to confront him, to rip open the silence and force the truth into the light. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. After dinner, he retreated to his study as he often did. I heard the scrape of a drawer, the soft thud of a book closing. My hands trembled as I walked down the hall. I pushed open the door without knocking. He looked up, startled, his eyes narrowing as he saw me standing there. "What is it?" I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to steady. "I found the cabin." The words hung in the air like a blade. His face went pale. His hand froze on the desk. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his eyes. "What did you say?" His tone was calm, but there was a tremor beneath it. "I found her letters, your letters. I know what you wrote to her. I know you threatened her." He stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You should not have gone there." My throat tightened. "Why?" "Because I might discover the truth, that you could not let her leave you, that you," my voice broke, "that you silenced her." His jaw clenched, his eyes darkening. For a moment, I thought he might strike me. Instead, he let out a bitter laugh. "You think you know everything. You think those letters tell the whole story. Then tell me," I demanded, my hands shaking. "Tell me what happened to her." He stared at me for a long moment, his breathing uneven. Then he turned away, walking toward the window. The night outside was black, the glass reflecting his shadowed face. "She loved me," he said finally, his voice low. "She loved me in ways you will never understand, but she wanted to leave. She thought she could throw me away, like a discarded thing. I could not allow that. She belonged to me." My knees weakened, but I forced myself to stand tall. "So you killed her." His silence was the answer I feared most. He did not deny it. He did not defend himself. He simply stood there, staring into the dark, as if the truth were too heavy to be spoken aloud. Rage flared inside me, stronger than the fear. "You took her life, and then you buried the evidence as if you could bury your sin. And all these years, you let me live beside you, thinking you were just cold, just distant. But you are something far worse." He turned then, his eyes burning. "Do not pretend you are innocent. You enjoyed the comfort I gave you. The house, the life, the security. All of it built on the strength of a man who refused to be left behind. All of it built on the strength of a man who refused to be left behind." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "Nothing justifies what you did. Nothing." He took a step toward me. I backed away, my hand fumbling for the doorknob. His voice hardened. "If you tell anyone, if you breathe a word of this, you will regret it." I slipped out of the room, slamming the door shut, my chest heaving. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold onto the railing as I climbed the stairs. In my room, I collapsed on the bed, sobs racking my body. The man I had married, the man I had shared a life with, was a murderer, and now I was his secret keeper. That night I barely slept, my mind caught between terror and resolve. I knew now that the danger was not just in the past, it was here, alive in the present. He had admitted his crime in everything but words, and he had threatened me by morning. I had made my choice. I would not remain silent. If I did, I would be no better than him. The woman he silenced deserved justice, even if it came decades too late. I packed a bag quietly, slipping the letters inside. As I zipped it shut, the floor creaked outside the door. I froze. His voice came through, low and steady. Going somewhere. My breath caught. He had been watching me. I forced myself to reply. I need some time away. The handle rattled, then stilled. You will not find peace out there. Everything you need is here. I clutched the bag to my chest, willing him to walk away. After a tense pause, his footsteps receded down the hall. Relief washed over me, but it was thin, fragile. I knew he would not let me go easily. I left the house soon after, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. Every glance in the rearview mirror made my stomach churn, convinced I would see his car following. But the road behind me remained empty. When I reached the police station, I sat in the parking lot for a long moment, staring at the building. My heart raced, my palms slick with sweat. What if they did not believe me? What if they told me the evidence was too old, too thin? What if he found out I had come here? But I had no choice. I could not carry this alone any longer. I stepped out of the car, clutching the bag like a lifeline, and walked inside. The officer at the desk looked up, offering a polite smile. "Can I help you?" My voice trembled, but I forced the words out. "Yes, I need to report a crime, a very old crime, but it is still unsolved. And I have proof." The weight of what I had done settled over me as I sat in that sterile room, waiting for someone to take my statement. I had crossed the line from silence into truth, and there was no going back. What I did not know was how close he was, or how far he would go to stop me. The police station smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. I sat in a small interview room with a folder of her letters spread across the table. My fingers traced the faded ink as if touching them might give me courage. Across from me, Detective Harris leaned forward, eyes scanning the words with growing intensity. "These are serious accusations," he said finally, looking up at me. "If what you are saying is true, your husband could face charges that have been buried for decades." My chest tightened. I know what I heard from his own mouth. He never said the word, but his silence confirmed it. And these letters show his threats. He told her she belonged to him, that if she left, he would make sure she regretted it. I cannot stay quiet anymore. The detective nodded slowly. "We will need to reopen the missing persons file. The body was never found, but with this, we may be able to build something. You need to understand, though, this will not be quick, and once he realizes you have come forward, he may retaliate." "I already know that," I whispered. "He followed me before. He will not let this go." Harris leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Somewhere he would not think to look for you?" I thought of my sister in another state, of friends from years ago, but deep down, I knew he had ways of finding me. He had always been one step ahead, watching when I thought I was unseen. "Nowhere feels safe anymore," I admitted. The detective's eyes softened. "Then we will do what we can to protect you, but you need to stay vigilant. Do not underestimate him." I left the station with a mixture of relief and dread. For the first time, someone else carried part of the burden, but I had also lit the fuse. If he suspected I had gone to the police, the danger would only grow. As I stepped into the night, the air felt heavier, charged with something unseen. I unlocked my car, sliding inside quickly. My hands shook as I started the engine. The headlights cut across the lot, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow move at the far edge. My breath caught. I stared, but the figure was gone. The drive home felt endless. Every car behind me made my pulse race. Every stoplight seemed too long. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The house loomed ahead, dark except for the faint glow of a lamp in the study. He was home. I sat in the car for several minutes, unable to move. Did he know where I had been? Had he already guessed? At last, I forced myself out, clutching my bag tightly. The front door creaked as I pushed it open. He was waiting in the hallway. "Long night," he said, his tone smooth, almost casual. "Yes," I replied quickly, avoiding his eyes. I needed some air. His smile did not reach his eyes. "Air is good, but you must be careful where you breathe it. Some places are not meant for you." The message was clear. My stomach churned, but I nodded, pretending not to understand. I walked past him, every step heavy, every nerve on fire. In my room, I locked the door, pressing my back against it. My hands shook so violently I could barely undo the zipper on my bag. He knew. Somehow, he knew. The next morning, He was gone before I woke. The silence of the house was suffocating. I walked through the rooms, checking each corner as though he might step out at any moment. On the kitchen counter, I found a single sheet of paper. In his sharp handwriting were the words, "Loyalty is everything. Betrayal has consequences." My blood froze. It was not a note. It was a warning. I crumpled the paper in my fist, tears burning my eyes. I could not stay here. He was playing a game with me, a dangerous game I might not survive. I packed quickly, stuffing clothes into a suitcase, sliding the letters and copies I had made into the lining dot. As I carried the bag to the door, the phone rang. The shrill sound cut through the air like a blade. I froze, staring at it. Slowly, I lifted the receiver. His voice came through, calm but edged with menace. "Leaving again? You should not run from home. Home is where you are safest." I slammed the phone down, my breath ragged. He was watching me. Somewhere, he was close. I bolted from the house, shoving my bag into the car. My hands fumbled with the keys, heart racing as I sped down the road. I needed somewhere public, somewhere with people. I pulled into a crowded diner, parking beneath the neon glow. Inside, I sat at a booth, trying to steady my breathing, but the feeling of eyes on me never faded. Every time the door opened, I flinched. Every man who walked past my table made my stomach clench. He could be anywhere. He could be anyone. My phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. Asterisk, "You cannot hide from me. I see you." I dropped the phone, my hands trembling. How did he know where I was? Panic clawed at me. I needed to call Detective Harris, but before I could, another message came. "Check under the table." Slowly, terrified, I reached beneath the booth. My fingers brushed against something taped to the underside. My stomach twisted as I pulled it free. It was a small envelope with my name scrawled on the front. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. It was me, sitting in my car, just moments ago in the parking lot. My hands shook so violently, I almost dropped it. He was here, somewhere outside, maybe even inside. He was watching me. I rushed out of the diner, the photo clutched in my fist. My eyes scanned the lot, but every face blurred together. My car suddenly felt too exposed, too vulnerable. I dialed Harris with shaking hands, my voice breaking as I explained what had happened. "Stay where you are," he ordered firmly. "We are sending someone now. Do not leave that spot." I obeyed, sitting in the locked car, every nerve stretched tight. The minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. Finally, flashing lights appeared in the distance. Relief washed over me, but it was thin, fragile. The officers checked the area, but he was gone. No trace, no sign, just the photo, as proof of how close he had been. "You need to understand," Harris said later, as I sat in the safety of the station again. "This is not just intimidation. He is escalating. He knows you are a threat to him now." My voice trembled. "What do I do?" The detective leaned forward. "We set a trap. If he wants to watch you, then we let him. But this time, we will be watching too." Fear coursed through me, but beneath it was a flicker of strength. I had lived too long in his shadow. If this was the only way to end it, then I would face him head-on. That night, they placed me in a safe house on the edge of town, but the plan was clear. I would continue my routine, continue living as though I was still vulnerable. They would follow at a distance, waiting for him to reveal himself. That as I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. I knew he was out there, watching, waiting. The hunter thought he still had control. But for the first time, the trap was not mine. It was his. And when it closed, there would be no escape. Mine. It was his. And when it closed, there would be no escape. The safe house was silent, yet I could not sleep. Every creak of the floor, every distant sound of a car outside sent a shiver up my spine. I knew he was out there, circling, waiting for the moment I let my guard down. The detectives had promised protection, but I had lived with him long enough to know how cunning he was. He did not strike when watched. He struck when you thought you were alone. In the morning, Detective Harris briefed me. "We are keeping surveillance around the property. He will make a move. He has already escalated. When he does, we will have enough to bring him in. But you need to be ready for the possibility that he will try to reach you directly." I nodded, though my throat was dry. "He will. He cannot stand the thought of me exposing him." The hours dragged on. I tried to distract myself by reading, but every word blurred. I checked the windows again and again, pulling the curtains tighter. When night fell, the unease grew heavier, pressing against me like a weight. At midnight, the phone in the safe house rang. The sound was sharp, slicing through the silence. I froze, staring at it. My heart pounded. Slowly, I lifted the receiver. His voice came through, calm and chilling. Did you really think you could hide? You are mine. You will always be mine. I slammed the phone down, breath ragged. The sound of the line cutting off seemed louder than thunder. Within minutes, Harris arrived with 2 officers, their radios crackling. We traced the call. He is close. Stay inside. I stood at the window, staring out into the darkness. Somewhere beyond the trees, he was watching, calculating his next move. My chest tightened with dread, but also with a surge of resolve. I would not let him control me anymore. An hour later, headlights swept across the driveway. A vehicle stopped, engine idling. The officers moved quickly, positioning themselves. I held my breath as the door opened. A figure stepped out, moving with deliberate slowness. Even from the shadows, I knew it was him. He walked toward the house, his presence commanding the night. He carried something in his hand, glinting faintly under the porch light. My body went cold. Stay back, an officer ordered, stepping forward. Hands where we can see them. He stopped, raising his hand slightly, though the smile on his face was unnerving. You think you can stop me with your lights and your badges? She belongs to me. No one can take her away. The officers advanced, but he was faster than I had ever seen him move. He lunged sideways, disappearing into the shadows at the side of the house. Shouts erupted. Flashlights cut through the dark. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. Then I heard footsteps on the porch, moving closer. The back door rattled. My breath caught. He was trying to get in. I grabbed the heavy lamp from the side table, gripping it tightly. Every nerve in my body screamed with fear, but beneath it burned something stronger. For too long, I had been his prisoner in silence. Tonight, I would not cower. The door burst open. He stood there, eyes wild, breathing hard. For a moment, we stared at each other, the years of deception and terror crashing between us. You betrayed me, he hissed. After everything I gave you, after everything I kept hidden for you, you should have been grateful. You murdered her, I said, my voice trembling but strong. You destroyed her life, and you tried to destroy mine, but you will not win this time. He took a step toward me, his hand tightening around the object he carried. It was a knife. I raised the lamp, ready to strike, but before he could close the distance, Harris and the officers stormed in. Drop it, one of them shouted. For the first time, I saw true panic in his eyes. He looked from me to the officers, his chest heaving. The knife clattered to the floor as he raised his hands, but his gaze never left mine. It was as if he wanted me to know that even in defeat, he believed I would never be free. The officers tackled him, forcing him to the ground, cuffing his hands behind his back. He struggled, cursing, his voice echoing through the room. She is mine. She will always be mine. I collapsed into a chair, the lamp slipping from my hands. My whole body shook as I watched them drag him away. The man who had haunted my nights, who had buried his secrets beneath the earth, was finally exposed. In the days that followed, the investigation moved quickly. The letters were entered as evidence. His confession to me, though indirect, was supported by the threats, the stalking, and his attempt to break into the safe house. The detectives reopened the missing woman's case, digging in the places the letters hinted at. When they found fragments of clothing buried deep in the woods near the cabin, the final piece of the puzzle snapped into place. He had hidden her there all along, convinced time would protect him. But time had failed him, just as his arrogance had at the trial. I sat in the courtroom, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. He refused to look at me, staring instead at the floor, his jaw set in stone. Witness after witness spoke. The letters were read aloud. The photograph from the diner was displayed. The judge listened in silence. When the verdict was read, guilt or relief washed over me so strong, it nearly knocked me down. He was sentenced to life, his freedom gone forever. But freedom did not come easily to me. For weeks after, I jumped at shadows, flinched at unexpected sounds. The memory of his voice haunted me, whispering that I could never escape him. It was only when I returned to the cabin one last time that I felt the weight begin to lift. The door stood broken from when I had first forced it open. Dust covered the floor, cobwebs stretched across the corners. I walked to the desk, running my hand over the wood where I had first found the letters. This is over, I whispered to myself. You cannot hurt me anymore. I stepped outside, the forest alive with birdsong, the sun filtering through the leaves. For the first time, the woods did not feel menacing. They felt free. I left the cabin behind, locking the memory of it away. My tears were no longer of fear or grief, but of release. The man who had hidden his crimes underground was gone. The truth had risen, and with it, my strength. As I drove away, the horizon stretched wide before me. The road was open, endless. For years, I had been trapped in silence. Now, I had my voice back, and I vowed I would never let anyone bury it again. I would never let anyone bury it again.